Inside the Box Reviews. We're taking a look at the NECA God of War 3 Ultimate Kratos figure. This is a piece I am so excited to finally have in hand. NECA had done God of War figures, I think back around the time of God of War 2, or maybe slightly after when they were doing the PSP games, but I know they did a lot of God of War 2 based figures. And I had picked one up back then. I really enjoyed it. I love the God of War series, or at least the 3 original big games. That's about as far as I ever played. And when God of War 3 came out, some company, I don't even remember who, I think it might have even been Sony themselves, put out a figure that was just really lackluster. It was more of a statue than an action figure. They did a Zeus as well, I believe, that wasn't very appealing. And NECA started showing off prototypes that they had done of their God of War 3 Kratos. And he had the Nemean Cestuses, he just had all this cool stuff, he looked badass, and it seemed like something that would never be. Well, times have changed. It seems like NECA and Sony are now best buds again, and we've got this guy in our hands. So let's take a closer look and see what NECA has hooked the fallen god up with. Kratos' primary accessory that he comes with 2 of are the Blades of Athena, I think. I'm pretty sure. Blades of Exile, I know, look quite a bit different, and the Blades of Chaos is probably what I'm going to accidentally call these most of the review, but I think those were long gone by this stage of the games. But these are a marked improvement over the original. We of course do get 2 of them. They're basically the exact same sculpt, so I'm just going to hold one at a time for simplicity's sake. If you take a look at them side by side, here on the left we have the new version, and on the right we have the original version from my God of War 2 figure. You can see just the thickness of the blade is a major difference. They went with a much thinner plastic this time instead of the big chunky blade we got originally. A lot of the same details, but still very cool upgrade to these blades. Another nice feature, you can kind of see it here, is that it's actually orange translucent plastic making up the blade, really giving it that glowing fiery look. And then it's a raised section here where we have all the writing or runes or design or whatever that is, so you can actually see from the front that section's a little raised up, which looks pretty darn cool. Overall, I just think this is an amazing redo of this blade. Very happy to see it done like this. And Kratos actually comes with storage for his blades, though you wouldn't know it looking at him right now. Well, you might, because these pegs are a little obvious. Now, I've got to say, these, I don't even know where they were packed in the box with Kratos. They were in their own little separate bag that fell on the floor after I finished opening up the figure. So if you're opening up Kratos and you don't find these pegs, take another look, because they're in there somewhere. So these actually pop out of his back. They're kind of hard to get out once you get in. They don't entirely match his paint job either. And once you suffer through getting those out, we do actually have a holster. It's a softer rubber piece, 2 pegs on the back that will peg into Kratos' back. And you can see it's a nice kind of golden sheath here. We have the chain going around the outside and a little resting spot at the bottom. You take the swords and kind of slide them in there, get them to kind of cross back behind Kratos' head. And then you have great storage for the blades back behind him. And if you look at them from the front, I think they look really good. There's no actual carrying case here in the game. They just kind of hover on his back magically, but I guess they are magic blades. But from the front with those blades behind him, he really does look great. It looks just like I'd expect him to. The other accessories Kratos comes with are the Nemean Cestus, Cesti, I don't know, I barely know how to pronounce the word if I'm even saying it right, but these are awesome. These accessories have actually been floating around from bootleggers in China for years. After NECA's prototype was released or shown, these things started coming up. They must have actually been all the way molded or something. But you could buy a Kratos figure from China and they would come with these. Or something similar. I'm sure they don't look exactly like these anymore. But these are really nicely sculpted. The great Nemean lion look going on. With the hair coming off the back. The eyes are detailed. The teeth are nice and sharply detailed in there. The paint's really nice, kind of silvery, but still a little brass to it, and then black sections of it as well. It's kind of hollowed out section here on the one side, though it's solid on the other side. The big spiky tufts of fur coming out. Just overall, a very impressive looking weapon. Now, if you're putting this on Kratos' left hand, you can just slide it right on. For his right hand, we actually have to remove his piece of the golden fleece here on his arm. That's a rubberized piece, it pops right out. It actually comes separate in the package originally. And then we could take this big old boxing glove, We slide it right over top, and it's a pretty secure fit there on his wrist. You can still rotate it when it's on there. I would be careful because I feel like you could get some paint rub if you're not too careful with this. The only real downside I've found is that his bicep joints aren't quite tight enough on either side to really support the weight of these big chunks of plastic. So you can see they kind of tend to flop around once you have these on. I might try to tighten this joint up to see if I can correct the problem so I can get him in some more dynamic poses with these, but the elbow seems to hold the weight just fine. It's a little loose, but nothing horrible. And overall, I think he looks really cool with these. I'm glad we finally have them. Taking a look at Kratos himself, I am honestly surprised. I thought we would get some reused parts in the original figures. I don't think there's one piece on this figure that's a reused part. Everything seems to be sculpted new. Kratos' proportions are different. Everything just feels very different and very new on this piece. We get two different head sculpts. The first one we're going to look at here is his more stoic head sculpt. This is the one that I think matches what some of the older figures were most. I really love the detail they've given his skin. Instead of just going with a flat whitish gray, they've actually kind of speckled it onto his skin. So there's darker areas and lighter areas that really just give the impression that these are ashes on his skin. The tattoo going through his eye is nice and dark, much darker than I've seen them do it in the past. And it goes all the way to the back of his head. We have veins sculpted there in his head, big eyebrows. We have the scar going through his one eye. His eyes actually do have a little bit of gloss to them, so they seem to kind of shine in the light, which is very cool. His pissed off frowning face and his trademark goatee. And then we could pop that head off, and we could pop in this pissed off head. And this is a little cartoony. It's not very realistic. If you saw a real human that looked like this, it would be really strange. But I love the sculpt they did here. He has this big grimacing expression. You can see his teeth are a nice yellowy color. The gums are even painted in there. His beard looks a little more ragged even in this version. And then his eyes are just filled with anger, and they're looking up, which I think is great because Kratos is always fighting opponents that are much larger than him for most of the games. So giving him this look where he's looking up at his opponent, I think is very fitting for the character. And then zoomed in this far, you can get a little better look at that speckled detail of the paint, which I just absolutely love. The chest on this figure has been completely reworked. Once again, I guess I need to stop saying that because everything has been, but it's a very cool muscular sculpt. They did the same great paint detail here with the speckled white and then the deep red of his tattoos or whatever they're supposed to be. I know it's a weird thing to mention, but they actually seem to get nipples on this figure that look like nipples. All of my previous God of War figures have just like his mustard stains on his chest, so go NECA for getting better at painting nipples. We do get the scar through his abdomen, which he gets in God of War 2, and I'm glad to see that actually making an appearance. I don't think it was on any other figure before. We get some veins going on in his upper chest. Flip him around. More great muscle detail. We do have the two holes because I left them unpegged because those caps are a pain to get out, so I might not bother with them again. No backside to the scar, which kind of sucks. I would have rather see the other end because the blade that he was hit with actually did go all the way through him. Same great sculpting and paint goes onto the arm. We can see more veins bulging out. The tattoo further details. Then we have the chains over there across his wrist, looking very good, very tarnished and worn, very beat up looking. And then he has the wrappings there around his hand, a nice dark red with some kind of brown and black accents added in there. Both hands are this tight gripping pose. It's the only hands he comes with, but the only ones he really needs. On his right arm, we get the golden fleece, which is soft rubber, painted a bright gold. There's a little bit of a wash in there to darken it up, but it is pretty darn shiny, which I think kind of works with what we have here. They also did add some bright red blood, which I think is a little overdone. I think they could have toned that down, made it look a little deeper red, but the sculpt work on here is really nice. Looks fantastic. We have the wrapping going around his arm there. You can still see the veins and everything underneath the soft rubber. The fact that this is also rubberized, I know it's probably for articulation, but I do wonder if maybe they intend to do a God of War 1 or 2 version without this armor. We get the other part of the golden fleece here on his wrist, which I already mentioned pops out to put the gauntlets on. Then you can see more of the chains there around his wrist and the same kind of hand. Around his waist, we have his very Greek-looking belt, and then his tattered-up Spartan robes, which look really nice and dirty. The little eyelets going through them, which are actually see-through. It's a nice soft rubber material as well. No real detailing on the back side, but not a big deal. On the back of the figure, we continue that ripped-up look, and just very, very well executed here. And not to be a weirdo, but he does look like he has some kind of Greek boxer shorts on here, almost like wrappings around his leg, which has a good kind of linen look to it. You can see the little piece sticking out here on the side. Same kind of detailing we see in the rest of the figure. It goes down through his legs. And then we have his boots, which are new. We kind of have wrappings underneath, and there's this gold trim. And then we have the little Hermes wings off the side, which are nicely detailed, also soft rubber, so you don't have to worry about them breaking on you. And then his standard sandals at the bottom with his painted toenails. The articulation on this figure is pretty darn good. There's a couple places where I could potentially ask for a little more, but not many. The head really is the one place I find it a little limited. Just a ball joint, so you can look decently down, a little bit up, go side to side, you could tilt. I just wish he had a disc hinge in the neck so he could look really far up. I think that'd be perfect, but minor complaint there. Arms are on pin socket joints, so it'll go forward, back, as well as out to the side. You can still do the same thing on the side with the armor, with the fleece. The rubberized plastic really lets you just move it around however you need it to. He has a swivel at the bicep, which is loose on both arms, disappointingly. We get a nice double jointed elbow. It doesn't bend in as much as you'd really like it to. It goes past 90 degrees, but just because of the bulk of his upper arm and the chains around his forearm, it really kind of hinders the movement, but past 90 degrees is pretty good in my book. The wrist can swivel as well as hinge up and down. At the chest, we have an ab crunch, which is kind of unusual for NECA, so you can bend very, very far forward. He doesn't bend back quite as much. And then you have a cut joint there at the waist. They'll go side to side. Pin socket legs, so they will go forward, back, as well as out to the side. You even get a good range of motion on the leg where the clothing is. The clothing's nice and pliable, so you really can just get it out of the way and move the figure to your desire. We have a swivel at the upper leg. A nice double jointed knee, which just lets him bend very, very far. A ball joint at the foot. You can't go very far up because of the bulkiness of his shin pads. You can go pretty far down with it. You can rotate side to side a little bit, as well as pivot at the ankle. Then we do have a little bit of a toe hinge, also limited by the sculpt of the sandal. He does have peg holes there at the bottom of his feet as well. Here's our new Ultimate Kratos compared to two of the earlier versions. On the right there is the first one I ever picked up. I think it was just called the Golden Fleece Kratos. I'd have to look that up. But you can see there is a huge difference in proportion. Articulation's completely different. Just a whole world of different between those two figures. And on the left there, the thing I'm pretty sure is a bootleg, even though I bought it from an American eBay seller, is at least supposed to be the other version of Kratos that was released with God of War 2. And he features the cool flying chain fiery blade thing going on. Now, the reason I want to highlight both of these versions is just to show off that they each come with a unique accessory, the fiery chains for the Blades of Chaos and the Gorgon head, and neither of those accessories will work with this new figure. The Gorgon head has a hand built in. It's designed to go on a ball joint, so it really can't fit onto Kratos' body anymore with this new version. And the extended Blades of Chaos require both a peg that goes into the wrist of the figure, and it also requires the ball joint of the wrist in that figure itself to kind of pivot down at an angle where it looks more organic. Because this new Kratos uses a swivel and hinge method of articulation at the wrist and doesn't have those holes in his gauntlets, I think it's going to be pretty darn hard to get him to hold these blades and have them look correct. And then for one more comparison, I wanted to bring in the God of War 2 Ares Armor Kratos, because I kind of feel like this might be the only old version of Kratos, at least from God of War 2, that's still worth picking up, just because he is very different from this new version. But even in the big bulky armor, you can see this version of Kratos looks practically anorexic next to our new one. But the plus side, with a little playing around, you can get this new Kratos to hold the Blade of Olympus, so that accessory is actually transferable to the new version. I am so happy NECA put this figure out. I think they did a phenomenal job on it. My only real gripe, honestly, are those floppy bicep joints, and I'm really thinking I might be able to tighten them up using a little bit of super glue and a lot of patience. But I think the accessories on this figure kick ass. I love the sculpt on it. I think they knocked it out of the park. Almost every other point of articulation on this figure seems awesome. It's just a very well constructed figure. And this is honestly one of those figures I opened up and just got more out of the figure than I ever expected. I hadn't paid maybe as much attention as I should have to the early production photos of this figure, and I was just really taken by surprise at how detailed he was, how posable he was, how just overall phenomenal this figure is. He gets a very high recommend from me. Despite a bunch of little flaws, I just can't help but love this thing. And before I go, I did a quick run through on those other God of War figures for this video. There is still some more to say on them if you really want to hear more, so let me know in the comments below. Is it even worth reviewing those guys anymore? Make sure you follow me on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been another Outside the Box Reviews. I'm gonna go kill Zeus and claim Olympus for myself or something. See you guys later.